I'm not going to start with any easy questions.
What would you do if you couldn't fail?
I was vulnerable in the sense that I was just who I was.
In my journey as an entrepreneur, I really found who I am as a human.
I was much more emotionally available to everyone because I was much more balanced.
Finding the grace and the humor in the balance of it all.
Whatever happens in the gut happens in the brain, and whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut.
Do you have a specific morning routine?
I was able to sort of reset my nervous system by getting involved with the cold.
Allow ourselves to have imperfection.
Absolutely had mentors, absolutely 100% had coaches.
A wake-up call to me that I could not try to be something I'm not.
Seeing results of just isolating the breathing was having these tremendous impacts on my physiology.
Work at a gratitude practice.
What the hell am I doing? Can I really do this? Is this really worth it?
90+% of the decisions that we make today actually stem from fear.
When was I proud of myself today?
I think for me, it's really inspiring people to step out. And you don't have to step all the way out.
Then there are these other moments of magic and joy.
If we can just push into discomfort, we actually find that on the other end, there's a lot of benefit.
What's your purpose?
Nothing starts without a plan. Nothing ever goes to plan.
I think we're going to see a new realm of healing that ultimately wasn't available to us.
If we can bring a practice into our lives that helps us be more vulnerable.
So much of entrepreneurship, I truly believe, to anybody on this call is grit.
I got involved with Wim. I just love the guy. He's just a great human. When people are on the path, they shine.
We so often convert things into flaws as opposed to strengths.
We all deserve to be happy, healthy, and strong.
I'm so thrilled that this content is getting out there, that you guys are promoting bold and vulnerable message and aspirations for people, because I hope that we can all really live that every day.
Hey, this is Jessica.
And Svetlana, and you're listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast,
where we aim to inspire others to live authentically through sharing the bold and vulnerable stories of peak performers across a variety of industries.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited for today's episode because we have somebody that is coming on, and she has been a wonderful mentor to me and to so many women and men. She's definitely transformed my life in many ways that I can't even count. I've been following her from the beginning. She is a spiritual success coach. She's a best-selling author, and she's the creator of the Harmonious Hustle. I would like to introduce everybody to Nichole Sylvester.
Yay. Thank you so much. That was so sweet. And I love to hear that because I know you from like Tony Robbins' world, but you never know like who's picking up what or what's, and that just goes to show how powerful it is to just show up online and do your thing and, help people share stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, I want you to just have the whole show to yourself, and can you just start and just tell people just about you and your story?
Yeah. So essentially I'm the coach that never wanted to be a coach, didn't believe in coaches, thought all of this personal development stuff was total BS. And, it was just about 4 years ago that I just had this moment in a meditation retreat. And I was there thinking of how can I make more money? How can I get better at my job? Basic things that people think of. And I get this calling, this, voice came over me and it says, help women share your story. Everything will be taken care of. And at the time I had this whole gap of my life that I didn't share with anyone except for the people that had to know because they were in my life at that period of time. So when it said share your story, I was like, no. I've been doing everything I can to hide these things from people. Why would I share it? So it was this moment of, for the next 8 months of understanding wow, I really have to come out and share these things, but I'm so scared. And the things that I didn't want to share were just at my past. I moved to LA, and that was in 2009. I moved there on a healing journey just to get sober. I was a single mom. I wanted to get sober. And when I got there, I was no longer Nikki, which is what I used to go by. I was now Nichole Sylvester. And Nichole, she just doesn't talk about her past. She doesn't know where her daughter's father is. He left us, and let's just keep it at that. But the truth was that I was in a super abusive relationship. I was actually in multiple, but I found myself in an abusive relationship with my daughter's father. And, you know, I got pregnant. We were selling a ton of drugs. Like I made my first $1 million by age 25. We had a gorgeous house on a golf course in Vegas, and it was the craziest thing. It was like a movie. And when I had my daughter, I realized like, okay, I need to get out of this cycle and pattern, which seems like, yeah, no shit or no crap. You guys get out. Like that's normal. But for me, I grew up in a family where men beat women. They hit them. They freaked out. So selling drugs and making a lot of money was like kind of successful. And my family just kind of pushed me back to Vegas. Like, you have a life there. Things are working for you. Go there. I don't think they got the full extent, but everything came to a breaking point one day when I ended up with 10 staples in my head because of, you know, a fight that we got into. And it was then where I was like, I have to leave this relationship. I have to leave. And I couldn't leave because he didn't want me to leave with my daughter. And I actually chose to like drug him with my sleeping pills and leave. And we left. And 6 weeks later, he murdered a woman he was dating in our house. So it was like, holy crap, all of my generational patterns of this is what men do. And eventually they'll change. And like, you know, the chaos that I saw as my normal life came to the space of like, you have to wake up and get it together. So I went on that journey. And then, you know, it was just the 11-year anniversary of that murder last week when I was in Vegas, actually visiting for a speaking event. So a much different life, you know, so that's how I found my way here.
Wow. Yeah. I remember reading about that in the book.
Oh yeah.
I read your book in like 2 days. I was like, oh my
I know. Oh, that's awesome. I know people like shocked me because the book is 300 pages. And I was thinking like, you know, you don't want a book where I have so many books that are sitting on my bedside table that like just can't finish. And it's not that they don't have great information. I just can't finish. And I just kind of thought that my book would be like that for some people. When people are like, I read your book, like I started last night and I couldn't stop. I'm like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. So it was cool. It's cool. Thank you for buying it and reading it.
Yeah. I mean, that whole, like, it's interesting because when I think about that moment, you know, when you were, I remember you were like in the kitchen or something like that. And you were like debating whether you should put these drugs in or not. And I was like, oh God, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. I mean, even when I was rewriting that book, when I was writing the book, when I was editing it, like when I got to that point of writing that, and it ends up being in the beginning of the book as like the prologue, it was even so scary to write because you can read it as like a book, but like that was like, I actually had to stand and live that. And it's crazy because now I teach people about worthiness and boundaries and all those things, but it's like life led me on a path so that I could be the teacher, but I had to go into like the trenches of everything that's not worthiness so I could fully understand what it feels like to kind of get yourself out of it. In the book, from what we're saying, it sounds super sensational. Sometimes when I talk about my own book, my own life, I'm like, this stuff sounds crazy. but the truth of the matter is it's just radical evidence of what's possible, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, since we're on the topic of the book, right, what was that process like for you? I mean, I know because I've witnessed it as you were doing it, but just for the listeners, you know, like what was that like for you to write it, to kind of go back to that space and to come out of it as well?
Yeah. I mean, writing that book was like, geez, like one of the hardest things. I'm leading a group of writers right now and they're like on their final thing and I see how hard it is. I think for this book, it was like, I always say that it was like a little animal that just was like gnawing its way trying to get out of me. It just drove me crazy. It was like, this book needs to be birthed. Like you need to share this book. And there were times where I was like, I don't want to write this book. It's becoming, you know, so costly. Not only is it costing me thousands of dollars in like editing and all these things, but it's also taking so much of my time. And it was really crazy, but I feel like I was so supported in it because my business went like, it's like the year that I actually finished my book, my income 16 times, like it blew up. And then also I finished my book, but I was like in a deep space of devotion and I just knew that I was called to do this. And I was like, just get it done. I had a lot of breakdowns, a lot of breakthroughs, but you know, it's done now. So I'm glad.
So when you mentioned that you went to a retreat and you were meditating or you were in some sort of, were you meditating? I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth.
It's like a silent meditation retreat. Yeah.
Awesome. So that was my first question, kind of what was that? What got you to that space? But I think that the second piece of it is the chronology of it. So at what point from when you went to that retreat did you start that process of writing the book and actually the process of how you were going to share your journey from that experience of, okay, this voice is telling me to share it. Yeah. Now what's the next step?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I always kind of joke that we were going to make a movie out of this. Like even like when I was not sober and like we were still cleaning up the house, you know, like the house where the murder was, I had to like go back and clean up all the things and sell the things. And I would joke about that. So it's like, I kind of knew that there would be something. I didn't think that there would be a book as me, as a success coach, people paying me money to help them with their lives. That was not expected. The way that it happened in order, that was 2004 that was New Year's Eve, 2014, I should say. And so 2015 is where my business started. But the way that it happened is I basically took that information and was like, what the hell was that? And I went back to my life and I watched my life as like a financial services person just fall apart. I was in a commission-only business that was successful and I just could not get clients. Like I hated my work all of a sudden. And I wanted to create something that was inspiring people to find their way out of suffering. And I didn't even want my face on it. I was hiding myself. Like I thought it was going to be like an inspirational Huffington Post, like a website where people could go and like find out, like look up things. Because really when I was like in my darkest times, and I think I wrote this in my book, I was like up all night, like 4:00 in the morning from cocaine. I was drinking wine to come down. My daughter was like 6 months old or something. And I'm in this abusive relationship and I would Google like life coach or rehabs. Like I was looking for inspiration. I was looking for something. I didn't have anything. So I wanted to create something like that. And then as time went on and I was just asking for guidance, like, what do I need to do? How do I do this? What is this thing you want me to do? This is how I talk to myself in spirit. And eventually it came that I was supposed to make a video. And I ended up making a YouTube video. It's on YouTube. It's kind of funny to me now because I had too much makeup on and I realized from that point on, I don't like people doing my makeup. I don't like to wear a lot of makeup. I don't care if other people do it. but I made a video and I had to actually drink a glass of wine to do it because I was so scared to make it. So I made like a coming out video. And that was in October of 2015 about domestic violence. And I had my first client in my business December 31st of 2015. So it was 1 year later that I had my first client. So, I mean, it was like, I was in a radical surrender of just letting everything fall to hell and like what needs to come up, from that.
How do you feel when you go back and like retell your story, like consistently, like, when you come on to podcasts or, different talks that you do, or when you tell people, like when you have to go back and like retell this, how does you process that? And
sometimes it feels different. Sometimes it feels fine. Sometimes it feels like I feel disconnected from that version of me, so it doesn't matter. Other times I'm feeling like, are these people like judging me for this? It just really depends on what state I'm in. Saturday I went to Vegas and I shared this story and I could see everyone's faces, but at the same time, like when I led them through the process of the work I do, they were crying and like going through, because really, in our human way of like judging and, oh my God, and this is sensational and what the hell is this? We have all these judgments, but the truth is like, if anyone else came on and said, I want you to accept all of yourself and love yourself and you could still find success and you can still do all the things you dream of, but they had like a great life, you'd be like, well, so what? You don't get it. You don't get what I've gone through. But people listen to me and connect to me because they're like, well, damn, if you did all of that and you could still like make $500,000 in your business and just start it from scratch and do these things, like, why not me? So I just own it. But it is a constant process of like owning it and like reintegrating it and, all those things.
Because I was just curious, to keep, because it is part, like that's your story, that's what made you who you are, and that's it's part of you, there's nothing wrong with that. And I was just curious because when you have to constantly, like when you have to go back and like retell it, Sometimes
Yeah.
like, is there an identity around it? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there is like an identity. I mean, I think it's going to be like that until, you know, it's like my book just came out in May, and it's kind of how people find me. Like, it's so strange. Like, you know, someone tagged me today and she was like in Estonia, and like, she's like, got my book. And I was like, cool. Like, you know, it's like people you don't know, they find your stuff. But like, I feel like when my next book comes out, that's going to give me it's going to shift that identity a little bit, you know? But I think I'll always be known for that story. Like, people are known for their like most transformational, like, holy crap stuff. And that's mine. So, you know.
Since you mentioned another book, have you started writing another book? Is it just a thought in your mind, or is there something coming out soon? And what's going on?
Yeah, I started writing like 2 books, just because once you write a book, it's a process that you love and hate, right? It's like a beautiful process. And I just feel like writing a book is like such a privilege, and it just is so much more lasting and so much more of a way to connect with your people more than anything to me. Like, I just love books, and there's people, like, I just pulled out my teacher's book yesterday and started reading it again for like the 4th time. And so for me, I love writing books. I realized, even though my last book was really hard to write. So I finally decided what book I was going to write. And it's a money mindset book, because one of the things that I was going back and forth on, like, what do I want it to be about? But one thing that keeps coming up, and this is something even I've resisted, because I'm like, well, I'm not a millionaire yet. Why would I be a global voice on like money mindset and wealth consciousness? But I'm good at it. And there's a reason why, with all the things that I lived through and had to come up against, I still was able to 16 times my income and create the things I create. And I just was like, you know what? People need this. I'm just so tired of people saying no to things because they can't afford it. I'm so tired of people living in like physical fear and dis-ease because like money fears and stress. So I started writing that, and I'm like 3 chapters in. So it'll be a much easier book, but I'm not putting a really deadline on it because I have so much stuff happening right now that I'm just like, I'm just going to, you know, get it out there. Maybe after my live event in May, I'll be more adamant about getting it done.
What's the other book?
The other book is about not abandoning yourself. So it's just like it's like everything that's in O Shift in the story, but it's broken down in lessons. So that would be a longer writing book. This other book feels like really easy, and it's just something that I just want to put out. So they'll probably both be written, but I feel like the other one, there's still time. So I don't know. I'm very like, let's see what happens, life. Spirit, where do you need me to be? What do you need me to do? It's definitely not like the last book was like, this is it. This is what needs to be done. I got a vision of the cover, like everything came through. This is more like, where am I being led, like with excitement and what feels like easy and juicy.
Okay, so going back really quickly to O Shift, is there anything that you would do differently in that whole process?
In the writing part?
Yeah.
I'd probably keep some of the stuff that we cut. We cut out a lot of the book because my editor thought that it was too sensational. It just was long. We're like, it's getting long. There's 79,000 some words in that book. I wrote like 116,000 at first. It didn't need to be that long. But after people read it in like 24, 48 hours, I'm like, it could have been longer. Like, we could have kept some of the events. There's a lot of events, like, you know, I was, there were other times with like guns, and I was robbed, and there was all kinds of things. But the cool part about that is I am going to like work on pitching my book to Netflix, Hulu, stuff like that. So there's a lot of content for series kind of thing. So I'm just glad the book got out and that's over, and now it's in its, you know, doing its thing.
So what sort of advice would you give yourself now, like looking back to that time?
I mean, I think I gave myself the advice that I needed. It's like the only advice that we really need is just to like love ourselves. Everything is, how can we love ourselves more? And it's really the same advice I'm giving myself now as someone that's considered successful, someone that's considered, you know, to have these things done. Someone pays, you know, I get paid great money to do the things I do, but I still return to that same lesson. If I was going to love myself more in this area of my life, what would it look like? And it's always going to be different because we're always seeing new and higher versions of what's available for us. the truth is like people are going to listen to you when you're in your inner authority. For me, coming out of nowhere and saying that there's a murder at my house and I dated a murderer. I've had people that come to me and like, God, you must have been in this place to attract that kind of dark energy. And like, you know, and now when my haters come forth, they're like, this person's just a hustler and they're this and that. So that is not a bonus. I would say that anyone can have a radical transformation in their life by deciding to be incredibly devoted and turning like one area of your life around. Right. So I feel like I had a disadvantage. I feel like I had a big disadvantage. Now that I've written a book and it was a well-written book, it's interesting, it's fascinating. There's people that are coming around, but at the same time, I attract a lot of people that are in trauma in places that are not great fits for affording my services. So I just wanted to be crystal clear on that. Now, going back to money mindset and creating success, there are people that are creating success and it's just by deciding I am going to help people and I'm not going to shut up about it. And I'm okay with charging for my services and support. People are looking for solutions every single day. There's people looking for solutions on the internet. They don't even know that they're looking for it. Like I was talking to my friend when I was in Vegas. He says, I was online on Instagram. I see an ad about this thing called drop shipping. I go to the free webinar. Now I'm buying the course. Like he didn't even know he was looking for that. So it's like just being totally unapologetic. And one thing I lived in, and this is like the layers of my teachings, was like, I deserve to thrive. None of these things that happen to me make me not available or not good enough to thrive. I deserve these things I desire. I deserve to get out of like what it feels like to be in a ton of debt and feel like I can't afford things that would like make my life feel better. So that's the first thing. But what do you think now that I've reframed that and kind of answered what you were thinking or what you were asking? Like, what do you have like another leg to that question?
Actually, while you were talking, I was just thinking about something that might help listeners is just how do you deal with people that are, I mean, what do they call them now? Trolls, haters?
Yeah.
How do you deal with
all of the above?
Yeah. I mean, how do you deal with that when people are coming at you and saying, you're not good enough, you are a hustler, you're this, I know something about you, and I'm going to bring it up, right? And so how do you deal with those types of people, and how can people that are entrepreneurs trying to make a shift in their life deal with those people that are coming at them in their lives?
Yeah.
Do you have any advice?
Totally. I mean, I think that there's all these layers of that too. Like, you know, there's always people that, you know, don't like you, or they may like say little like comments. And then there's like flat out haters. Like I had my first haters in the fall, and it was actually devastating. So it was the first time I ever had people like just come at me, like really like to the jugular, like writing reviews about me and all these things. And the stuff wasn't true. And I was just like, oh my God, it was painful. So I had like a cry about it. I did my thing about it. And then I got to the point of like, these people are not who I'm here for. I'm not here for them. And, you know, it messed up my reviews. It like messed up my things, but like no one has perfect reviews. Like, you know, so I was just like, in the world of like the internet, you know, it's always coming back to like your truth, right? And I'm not here for the people that don't like me. I'm here for the people that write me like, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for that video. Thank you so much for that thing that you said yesterday. That's who I'm here for. So if you're not paying for me, if you're not interested in the things I'm saying, like I really have to go back to the place of like the boundary is you're irrelevant. Your opinion is irrelevant. So when those haters were like coming, eventually I like wrote one of them back and was just like, I don't know you. We've never had a conversation. You're not paying me. Your opinion's irrelevant. You know? And so I would say that it takes spiritual stamina and knowing yourself and just coming back to your practices. But if you're human, like we all are, and you feel things, it's not fun. Nobody likes it, but it is bound to happen. I would say that like all of my super successful friends, you know, like with way bigger followings, making way more money than me, they're like, this is your rite of passage. Like, it's just the way it is. So
I love that. And so taking haters aside, how about people in your life that you trust dearly giving you constructive criticism or giving you advice or maybe pushing back on blind spots? How do you take in that advice, and how do you go forward with it, even if it's something that you're like, man, maybe that's a blind spot, or maybe I don't want to do that because I'm not seeing it? How do you take in advice that people are giving you that are successful that maybe you're not aligned with?
Yeah. I do. I mean, I do listen to it. I check in and see if it feels good. If it rings true and I know it's true, like I had a thing, like when I made all that money that I just sucked at saving money, I always find stuff to spend my money on, like, and it was good stuff like business investments, personal development investments, retreats. But one of my friends, we had a conversation about saving, and then we had a conversation later and he was like, well, I saved 50,000. How much did you save? And I was like, I didn't save that. So it was a wake up call of like, get your ass together or it's not going to get together, you know? And he makes less money than I make, you know? So I was like, it was interesting. So I actually love it. And I'll thank people, even if it's things, I'll thank them later and just say, thank you for that. Now there's other people that say stuff like, I think you spend too much money on eating out. And I think I don't take that constructive. I don't take that as criticism like that I want to take in, because for me, if it's saving me peace of mind, and if I don't have to worry about cleaning and doing all these things and it feels more graceful for me, then I'm going to do it just because you don't agree. So there's like, you know, we get to take in what feels good, but just being open that we don't know everything, you know? And one of my friends says this, and I think it's like the best advice. Don't take advice from someone that you wouldn't want to live their life. Like, why would you take their advice on what they're doing if you look at a snapshot of their life or even that area of their life? And if it's not a match for you, why would you take their guidance? Not that they're bad people, it's just not in alignment.
Yeah, definitely. It's like that saying where it's like, you don't go to a broke person and ask them for advice on how to make money. Or
yeah. True.
But I want to go back really quickly because you mentioned spiritual stamina, right? So what does that look like for you? How did you develop your spiritual muscle?
I mean, I like locked myself basically, I feel like inside meaning like I didn't do anything. Like I had no life for like probably like 2 years, it felt like. And it was because my old life was going out to clubs. I worked in nightclubs after when I moved to LA. I worked at a nightclub in Hollywood, and it was like the Hollywood club where all the celebrities went. And it was like this whole thing of like, if people are overweight, they can't come in. If they're not pretty enough, they can't come in. It was just BS. And when I found my spiritual practice, I found a lot of peace, and I was like, who am I? So I went into the space of, I discovered a Course in Miracles. I discovered Agape, and I just went into a space of, I'm feeling all of my time with this, feeling all of my time with it. And I did, and I became like obsessive, and I almost went too far in that way, thinking I know everything in that space. And, you know, like I can't listen to rap music. I can't say fuck. Like I thought all those things. And then I found myself like just coming back into life. Like I can integrate all these things. So now, like right now I'm kind of in that space where I'm canceling plans. I'll delete my apps. And for this weekend, I won't be online, and I'll just be flooding myself with things that are serving me because I'm being called to do something else, something new. So spiritual stamina is knowing that we're guided. Every cell in our body is guided. I don't care if it's Tony Robbins or Oprah. I don't care who it is. There's something in me that's guiding me in its most perfect way. And I got to be willing to listen to that. But I got to make the space for it, you know? And it takes courage because it's not normal. People will think you're weird. People will judge you for that. And it's just something you got to learn to live with.
So how do you do that with clients, right? Like say you get a client that is your ideal client, and you know, they're willing to surrender. They're like, I surrender, right? Mm-hmm. How do you guide them through that whole, like, you know, going into this new space? Like they've never been there, just someone that's curious and open.
Yeah. Well, we go through a process. So it's like you know, I guide them in, I give my clients custom meditations. I give them whatever they need to be in a container that is great for whatever they're seeking, right? But mostly we're just seeking ourselves. So I would say that people don't come to me that are totally new, like they've never meditated. They've meditated, they've been on my meditations, they've been in my things, they've been to my live events or something. But there are people that I've worked with, and we bring up something and trauma comes up and they like are pissed at me. Like, you know, like they're like, I don't know, this isn't what I signed up for. And then we have a conversation, and then they realize, you know, that it's for them. And, you know, but that's the real work. Because in personal development, there's a lot of people that are chasing the good feeling events, and they're skimming on the surface, and they never address what's really keeping them back. So I always say, like, I'm really great at working in the shadow, but I will never leave you in the shadow.
Yeah. You know, so this is all in the same area. So like speaking of being divinely guided, right? Like we're all guided and we all need to trust. And trauma, right? Like working through the shadows and the trauma. So now, like, how do you know, like since like, your inner authority, right? But like, how do you know when it's fear or intuition? Like when you have a bad past experience that was bad and you're like, no, my intuition's telling me that I can't do this, I got to trust, but really it's just fear holding you back.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's levels to this kind of discernment, because they can feel similar, especially in the beginning, right? And this goes back to the whole spiritual stamina. And it goes back to, I just did a Facebook Live on this today about inner visions and knowing the images of your mind and knowing what's coming up. So it's like thinking of something, if you have an idea and it's really exciting, you're like, I'm going to invest in this program. It's like $20,000. I feel like it's going to grow my business. I feel like it's going to put me around the people that are going to change my life. And then I drop you in a house with people that are like making $50,000 a year and they're bitching about all their money, and you're in that environment for the weekend. You're probably not going to invest in that program. Like you probably won't. If you're one of those people that's on the fence and this is something new. Now, flip side, I drop you off at a mastermind in Beverly Hills with people that are making $1 million plus, and you're there all weekend. You're probably going to make the investment. You'll figure it out. You'll do whatever you need to do. And it's because you've been like in this osmosis of belief and that energy of like, yes, it's possible. So I always say, like, if you're really unsure, consider like, put yourself in an environment that is a higher environment and see what feels good. For me, fear shows up in a different way. Like my intuition is something that feels like, it's like, oh, it's like a remembering. It's like a peace. It's like a expansive flowing feeling. It feels very feminine. Where the fear feels like restrictive, it feels icky. And it doesn't mean that fear doesn't come up for something my intuition is telling me to do, but it's also like, it still feels like a yes.
What have you done to invest in yourself? So do you have coaches? Have you done programs? Like what is your go-to for continuous betterment for yourself?
Yeah. I do a lot of I like really immersive things. So I love retreats. Like I just did 11-day training in Bali. I love stuff like that because I feel like humans can only tell me so much. And I really want to be like, I love to play like, how do I align with super consciousness? Like we can do all the NLP mindfuckery, but like at the end of the day, there's something that overrides all of our minds. And it's super consciousness. It's spirit. It's that infinite intelligence. And that, what I always joke is like spirit is my strategist, but it's like super true. So it doesn't mean I have invested in coaches. I have invested in a mastermind and they were great. But I have to say that like where I really love to play is like spiritual practitioners. Right now, I reached out to one of my friends today because I was like, I want to hire a spiritual practitioner that is business savvy. That's really what I am, even though I call myself a spiritual success coach. Because I want someone that's like bringing me back to spirit, not what this person did. Right. So, because the thing is, when I grew my business 16 times my income, I had no coach. I had no business mastermind. There was nothing. It was me being guided, and I was like searching and doing things, and I was seeing things. So what I've done is, I've traveled to India. I did One World Academy. I did Oneness. I go to Peru with a family. We're actually leading a retreat there in July. For anyone that wants to go to that, it's life-changing. But a lot of stuff with Michael Beckwith. Michael Beckwith, I consider him my teacher, and I've been going to his retreats since 2010. So a lot of that, and some spiritual practitioner courses like affirmative prayer, universal laws, all those kind of things. And Tony Robbins. all those Tony Robbins events, I think that they're fun. Like, yeah, they're so fun. So
yeah, they're a lot of fun. Definitely.
A lot of met through Tony Robbins. So I think that just, we did. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, you just meet really awesome people, and it's like what you're saying, right? Like you go into a house where people are making like 30 to 50K a year and they're bitching about their bills and how they don't want to pay for things. And then, or you go to a Tony Robbins event and you're like, oh my God, I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm resourceful.
One thing I love to think about as an entrepreneur is like that part at the Tony Robbins events where he like does the sales pitch on Mastery University and how everyone is like how do I pay for this? Like literally I had friends that were at UPW, LA, like a couple weeks ago. And one of my friends wrote me and says, what do you think about this for me? Like just ready to swipe his card for this. And it's like, there's people out there right now waiting to invest in all of us. Like, you know, some people hate Tony Robbins. For others, we're all like, go to Tony Robbins events. It's fun. It's amazing. But like everybody has their person, and it's up to us to show up and say, I'm willing to express my gifts and be available for the people that are ready to make change through me and in my services and programs. So that's an opportunity we all have.
For sure. Yeah. So what are some things that you're working on right now? Tell us what's new, what's exciting, what's juicy.
My live event, Harmonious Hustle Live, is like my favorite thing right now. It's like, I don't know, there's no other events like it. Like my favorite events to go to are like super spiritual silent meditation retreat or Tony Robbins, which are both ends of the extreme, right? But I feel like my event, I wanted something where you could like really be in the heart space, but really also be in the space of like, yeah, I'm here to make money. Yeah, I'm here to just be like the biggest boss that I can be. What would that look like if we brought the spiritual and the like boss version of us together? And that's what Harmonious Hustle Live is. I say it's like Kundalini meets Drake because I feel like that's my life. And I feel like I go back and forth between the two, and it's becoming more and more integrated, those energies. And it's like where I found success. So it's going to be super amazing. So like day one is like my favorite practitioners, healers, like sound bath. We're going to be doing intimacy work. We're doing breath work, like all those things where you're just like dropping down beneath the noise of the mind. And then day two is like you dress in like whatever makes you feel like the biggest like boss. Like we're going into like alter ego. Who do you have to be like that millionaire version of you, that super like not giving a damn version of you? So it's like we're playing in the multidimensional like ways of showing up.
I love that. And is this something that you're going to keep continuously do every year from this point on?
I don't know. I never know.
You don't know yet. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like in my ideal. Yeah. It would be something that keeps growing and getting bigger, but I've done things and dropped them. I think for this, it just feels really good. I feel like no one else is doing this, especially like this. So I think it's just going to keep getting better and bigger. And you know, this year I was just like put it at a price point, which I feel like is so affordable. And I was like, I just want to make this like an amazing experience, and to like get the footage, get the experiences, and we have people coming from everywhere, like Nova Scotia, Australia, all over Canada, the US. Like, so I was like, that's so amazing. Like people are ready for this. So super excited about that.
What is your goal? Like, what is your mission with this program for people to come out the other end with XYZ?
I want people to feel something that they're not going to feel, almost maybe they never felt it in their life, which is like really connecting with themselves. When I say really connecting with themselves, it's like not where you go to an event and you have to pretend to be this or that. Like the first day you're going to be like barefoot in like your Lululemons. Like it's going to be super, like what is it like to be in a place where you're totally held, can totally be yourself, but then also access the part of you that is infinitely resourced and can step up and say, I want this unapologetically. And like usually we're in one or the other. So I want women to feel like it's safe to be in both, because there is a paradigm shift where people are being called to go more into heart space and still show up and do big things. And that's where I feel like is my sweet spot, is like working with spiritual entrepreneurs, or people feel like they want to lead from the heart, but they also are unsure about what it feels like to say, I'm here to make money. I love making money and I'm going to do good things with it. So people are all going to walk away with their own thing, but I'll say that you'll walk away feeling expansive, feeling more love and acceptance for yourself, and also feeling like a little bit less giving a damn, because you're here for you and whatever that vision is that came through during those 2 days.
I love that. I love when you say that you want it to be more heart space, and that's like that's where you are, like that's where you're good at. And I see that shift where it's like the logic, the strategy just coming all from the mind. It's only going to get you so far. Like model this person, model that person. No, what about just feeling into yourself and figuring out what's right for you and what works for you and trusting that, you know? And I love that because I feel like it is such a, like, it's really going into that like feminine part of ourselves as well, you know, like that's super conscious. And then also like yeah, I want to make hella money, because I think in the spiritual community, there's this sense of like, oh, I'm spiritual, I can't make a lot of money or whatever. I can't ask for money for my services. And it's bullshit, you know? Like the transformation that you help facilitate is priceless. Like you can't even put a price tag on it.
Totally. And like our time, I'm not getting my time back. If I spend an hour with someone, I'm not getting my time back. We're exchanging. I'm circulating my knowledge base. I'm circulating my gifts. I've spent XYZ hours in meditation, crying. I mean, my last training, they were handing out puke bags with the meditations. It was like very intense. There's an intensity that is like in my work and a devotion. That's worth something. So if anyone's in my space and they want advice or guidance to go through this process, it costs money. And I'm happy to pay for things, you know? So it's like, there's this level of understanding. I would say that even for this whole thing of like what we said with the whole strategy, I joined a mastermind. It was great. I met so many great people. But what I realized from it is we were like looking at other people for what they're doing and how they are up here and like, we're not there yet. And it was like this whole thing about followers and all this stuff. And what I realized is like, I operate best from just like staying in my own lane. And my own lane has been fruitful. So, you know, I really am like, as a teacher, I feel like I tell people to stay out of the other people's lane. Follow the people that really do inspire you. Follow the people that really show you something. If someone's triggering you and you feel some sort of way, ask questions there, right? There's something there to be learned, but to look at someone else and think that they have something we don't, the only thing that's really needed, I think, of each of us is to like look within and dig deeper and ask, how am I meant to serve? What's my special like sauce here? And mine is always being like reevaluated, and I feel like it is having a new flavor. Like right now it's in the midst of a new flavor. I'm like, wait, where am I being guided? You know? So it's just, that's where I operate, and that's like where I coach from.
I love that you said, I operate in my own lane and my own lane's always been fruitful. That needs to be a catchphrase. My own lane's always been fruitful.
Yeah. I'm going to make that into a daily shift.
Like, yeah, you should be like, operate in your own lane. Oh, man.
I do see the own lane thing, but it's so important because it's so easy to fall out of your lane. And I fall out of my own lane a lot, like, because I have friends that are doing amazing things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, should I have done that? Like, why didn't I do that one thing? Maybe I should do this. Maybe it's like, there's an infinite amount of things we can do. But at the end of the day, when we come back home to our truth, there's something that's perfect for us right now. And we can go all in on that though. So I think that's where people fall. I see spiritual entrepreneurs doing this and it makes me want to shake them. They're like, my intuition said this is not the right time. So what? Do nothing? So just totally F around and like be broke and not help anybody? Like, no, pick something and go all in. And when that doesn't work, it doesn't mean it's going to be your forever.
Just curious, if you were to kind of just go off the grid for 6 months and do something completely different than you're doing now, what would that be?
If I were to go off the grid, I would go to Bali. I would go to Ubud because I've been there twice in the past 8 months and I just love it. I feel so nourished there. And I wouldn't do anything completely different. I mean, I would say like maybe rescue dogs and take care of dogs because I love dogs. But I love what I do. If anything, my work is just it's shifting into more like taking elite entrepreneurs, like high performance entrepreneurs, and putting them through this deep work. Making them cry, making them puke so that they can be better on the other side. And not that has to happen, but like the things that people are looking for in ayahuasca, we can do in sober meditation and breath work. But taking people through a really deep purge to move from head to heart and masterminding at the end of that. How can we support each other? How can we do these things? So I'm being really called to do that. So that's like in my near future, I feel like. But I love what I do. It's just always like changing. So unless I would take care of the dogs, nothing. I don't want to go off the grid. I end up missing my work when I get off of it. How's
whatever. Chanel doing?
Chanel's good. She's a teenager now, and she's just being a teenager.
How is that actually like really? Well, how is that like raising a daughter on your own?
Yeah, it's challenging.
Well, what advice?
I'm raising a business. Yeah, I mean, I'm raising a business and a child, and I have to take care of myself, my own needs. I have a lot of clients. I also have a high capacity for creativity, meaning that I have like so many ideas and I get frustrated. You know, I just like my assistant and I are going separate ways, and I almost know it's my fault because I have so many ideas and people just like, I'm hard to work for in that way, where I'm like, let's implement, let's create. And so for me, it's just me choosing to be like, what is really important? What's a priority? And what, because that's where I'm at, especially with my daughter. Her tutor was just here. I had to walk the dogs. Like, there's a lot, but I would say like I'm better for all of it. And I wouldn't, like, for me, I don't have coaches and I don't have any support people that don't have kids. It's not that they won't know, but like, you really can't know what it's like to have to go through all these things and then also take care of a child, and also like the trauma that like my daughter and I have been through. So I'm very particular on those kind of things, but yeah, it's hard, so it's a constant, like, how can I make this more graceful? How can I make this more easy? And it's like, cleaning services, laundry service, tutors, like having that little feeling of feeling guilty. Like, I don't want to help my daughter with homework. I suck at it. If I try to do anything beyond multiplication or division, it's done. So it's like, I'm not going to have the guilt and shame. Let's get a tutor, because it's not my wheelhouse. So it's always finding, but I used to feel really guilty about that stuff. So it's just always finding like a new way of like, what is the best way for me to operate here?
So are there any things that you do when you feel overwhelmed? Any practices that you have when you feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, a few. So I am big on like sound movement. This is some of the things we're going to be doing at Harmonious Hustle Day 1, Harmony Day, is how do we move energy through our body? Different movements, different sounds. It just depends where the energy is. I get anxious a lot because of all these things. And if I'm not in with my practice, and I just got my Gene Key like profile recently, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but the person looked at my Gene Keys, they don't know me, and they were like, your profile is so high energy. Before you even meditate in the morning, you need to work out because they're like, you're just not going to have the same effect. So anyway, it was really interesting. So I was like, oh, that's why I feel like this all the time. So for me, it's like moving that energy, a lot of celebratory stuff. Always, always, always coming back to slowing down. I am like ruthless with canceling plans. My self-care and my well-being is like everything. So, and that's where I'm at now. It might change later. Who knows?
I love that. I love that you're like, I'm going to honor myself first. Because if I don't fill up my cup first, then how do you expect me to show up anywhere else?
Yeah. And you read my book. I was sick for like years, and I have a tendency to like push because I do have a lot of ideas and I do have all this stuff. And I used to live by the whole thing of like, just drink coffee, pop an Advil, and like keep going. And I also had all male mentors, and male mentors like don't give a damn for the most part. They're like, yeah. So I like had this way of it. Like I had to rewire myself to be way more feminine and trust like that I don't have to do all those things. And I'm not going to miss out on like my biggest life calling if I cancel one lunch with someone. And there are people that I've canceled stuff with, and I feel like that they're like maybe upset or mad, but then there's other people, my kind of people are like, yo, I get it. Like, I wish I could see you, but like, I get it. And I'm the same way. So I think that we have to learn to like offer that to each other, especially as women, especially as like moms and stuff. Like for our mental health is everything, like, so we just need that space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, that's why when I say the whole Drake thing is like the Kundalini and Drake, I think it's funny is because like when I came back from Bali this past time, I got sick like on the flight home, like just like a flu or releasing or whatever. And I was like sick, fever, all these things for days. And then finally I got out of it. And I was like, I could have just kept staying on the couch and watching like documentaries because I just felt in that. And I was finally was like, just go to Soul Cycle and like listen to Jay-Z. Like seriously, like get out of this. So it's like, I know how to like tap out and like get into those spaces. So like we have to know how to push our buttons. And I get what you're saying, because there is like a paradox of like, do I have more to give here? Right. And it's like, we know that when we're working out, like when your trainer's like, give me 5 more and you're like, want to cry, but you're like, okay, I can. And we can. But it comes to this point where we're like pushing ourselves in a way that doesn't feel like it's serving us, but we're doing it. And then we have to check in and ask like, who is this really for? Is this so that I'll be liked and loved by this person? So I'll be accepted so I can be in this group. So I think that if I do this, Oprah will call in 5 years. No, like, what is this really for? So I've gotten much better at doing that, but still, it's always a work in progress.
I love hearing all of these bits and pieces of advice, and there's gold in here. So I hope that everyone listening is going to check you out and check out your event. So that being said, where can people find you What's the best method? Instagram, your website, shout it all out for everyone to follow you and find you.
So my podcast, The Harmonious Hustle, we have episodes like once or twice a week, definitely on Monday, sometimes on Wednesday. A lot of cool stuff there. And Instagram and Facebook, I'd say I play there equally, but I do more like deep dive lessons on Facebook Lives on Facebook. So that's there. And my website has all the things like speaking, whatever events are coming up. There's a Peru retreat that is going to be like so next level. And I don't know if I'm going to go back I don't know when I will be, because I have this other plan that I want to kind of put out into the world. So if anyone's feeling called to do like Machu Picchu and all those things, like definitely reach out.
For sure. And it's Nichole Sylvester, and we'll make sure to put all of that in the show notes. And it's Nichole, right? O-L-E.
Yeah, Nichole with an H. I always say that.
So people know that.
Yeah. Or just search up O Shift. You'll find it. There is another book called O Shift. It's just a different genre, but mine's the one that looks like O Shit. So you'll know.
Can't miss it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and taking time out of your day to be here with us and share this space with us and to share your energy. We really, really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. For more information on today's speaker, please visit us at boldandvulnerablepodcast.com.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the love by being bold and vulnerable. Thank you. We love you.